Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks so much for stopping by today. Today I am creating a fairy Christmas card, so I will be using Fairy Hugs stamps for this card. And originally I wanted to use alcohol inks, but I didn't feel like getting that messy. And so instead I chose to use a different card panel than what I would usually use for something like this. I would usually use either a Bristol or a watercolor cardstock, and so for this I am using Graffix craft plastic, which is what I normally use when I'm using alcohol markers. I love this because the main difference I think between the craft plastic and a Yupo paper is that the craft plastic takes heat a lot better than Yupo does. Yupo will take heat, but you have to be, it is a little more sensitive to heat than this paper is. And I'm going to be doing a lot of heat embossing on this card panel, and so I thought the craft plastic would be perfect. And another thing about craft plastic, or even Yupo, is that the materials that you use on it just move around a little bit differently. It's not the same as using alcohol ink, but since it is a non-porous plastic, the materials just move around a little bit differently. It's a little more fluid, I guess. You have more time to work with the material that you're using as compared to if this was like a cardstock watercolor or like a paper or Bristol paper. And so that's something that I really love about alcohol inks is how they move around on the surface. And so this is super fun. I used some Ken Oliver Color Burst powders. The color I'm using right now is Peony. And so I just have spritzed the panel, and this is a 5.5 by 5.5 panel that I have spritzed with some water, and then I added the Peony color, and then I'm just moving around with more water as well as a brush. And I'm just kind of making some little designs, just playing around a little bit. A lot of these don't end up showing at the end just because of the way it dries. But it's super fun. I think it's super fun to watch how it reacts and how the colors kind of just move on their own and create their own patterns. The next color that I'm using is Chartreuse, and I've just put it along that left-hand side. I'm going to spritz that with water, and then take a brush and get a little bit of that top color, the Chartreuse, to bleed into the Peony. So I am taking the color and kind of pushing it down towards the Peony, and you can see hopefully that the Peony is going to move up into that well of water for the Chartreuse. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll move to the other side of this panel and add a little bit more green. And then as I am doing other things on this panel, you can see the color kind of just does what it wants on that side, and it'll start to just move on its own more into that peony color. And it's so organic, something that I absolutely love about mixed media type projects. Is that it's just, you don't know what you're going to get sometimes, and it's fun experimentation. And so I just really love how that color just moves on its own and creates its own pattern on this panel. And I'm just trying to make some different patterns in that peony color. So I'm taking a brush and basically just wiping away a little of the color, just swatching it through. And then for that middle portion, I didn't want as much splatter, so I took a baby wipe and I'm just moving a little bit of that color out of the way. And once that panel has dried, I am going to take the Frilly Branches stamp set, which is actually 2 single stamps, kind of some little branches, and I have inked up the stamps with some embossing powder or embossing ink and stamp those on all 4 corners. And then I'm going to take some clear embossing powder and cover all of the panel. And this is where I am going to use my heat tool on the graphic craft plastic. So I make sure that my heat tool is heat up before I take it to the plastic. And then I'm also going to heat a little bit and then pull the heat away, heat a little bit. You don't want to concentrate the heat on one area because it will melt and curl. But like I said, it handles heat a lot better than a Yupo does. So I think it's perfect for some heat embossing. After I have embossed those, I'm going to take a little bit of some distress inks and go back over those embossed areas just to bring out that image a little bit better. So I'm using Festive Berries on the red, and then I'm going to use some Shabby Shutters over the green portion. And then I set the panel aside to see if that distress ink would dry. And while I did that, I went ahead and stamped up the Kissing Fairy image. I stamped it in some Versafine Clair Nocturne, and then I covered that with some Flurries embossing powder, which is really cool because it leaves like these little specks of white and like the fairy is sparkling. And then I'm going to fussy cut this image out. I absolutely do not like fussy cutting, but I really wanted the image to look as good as possible, so I did fussy cut it as well with scissors, as well as use my craft knife to get some of those little areas that I couldn't get with the scissors. And then I'm going to grab this Wreath Builder stamp set, and I am using the piece of holly with the berries, and I am going to be using some Versafine Clair inks for this. I am using Verdant, Shady Lane, and then the berries I color in the Tulip red color. And the distress ink did not dry on the plastic, and so to remedy the ink from moving or fingerprints or anything like that, what I chose to do was cover the panel with some clear embossing powder. So that's going to basically seal the ink underneath, and that won't move around. It also gives it a little bit of shine and a little bit of texture, which I like as well. And so once I have that sealed, I am going to go ahead and use the stamp that's called Fairy Poem, and I'm using some Morning Mist in Versafine Clair and doing some second generation stamping to stamp in that open area there on the panel. And then I'm just going to wipe off any excess so it gives it a really faint words in the background. And then I'm going to use the stamp sentiment that is Holiday Sparkle, and of course I got it crooked, so it says sending a little holiday sparkle, and I went ahead and I adhered that to a card base that is 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and I used that size because it fits perfectly in a 6x6 envelope. And then I added foam to the back of my little fairy and adhered her to the panel, and I'm using a little bit of the Twinkles glitter. You'll notice on the final pictures I did add a little bit of white gel pen just to give it a little bit more, so it would look a little bit more like sparkle. And that will finish off my card for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did like this video or find it informative, please go ahead and give a thumbs up. As always, I thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me, and I hope to see you next time.